In my previous life, after becoming a widow, I raised 2 daughters and, for the sake of so-called reputation, took care of my paralyzed mother-in-law with great devotion. Under my care, she lived to the age of 89. As soon as she passed away, my brother-in-law's family, armed with her will, drove me out of the house, overwhelmed with rage and in a daze. I was pushed into a pre-dug grave pit and died from the impact against my mother-in-law's hard coffin, a coffin I had painstakingly bought with money earned from odd jobs. After my death, my eldest daughter suffered relentless abuse in her husband's home. With only a middle school education and no maternal family to support her, she ultimately died tragically under her husband's fists. My younger daughter, having no place to call home in our hometown, left for distant lands and died from overwork. The 3 of us, mother and daughters, were utterly consumed by that family, leaving not even our bones behind. I was reborn after my husband's funeral. Outside, a storm raged with howling winds and torrential rain, while inside, the dim light of a kerosene lamp flickered like a bean. A violent knocking sounded at the door. "Gia, get up, the tofu you made will spoil if you don't sell it soon." I suddenly sat up. And what met my eyes were my 2 pitiful daughters. The elder one was only 13 or 14 at the time, her face sallow and thin, tears welling up as she said to me, "Mom, with such heavy rain, can you please not go sell tofu? We're scared." I lowered my head and looked at my own hands. They were still young, not yet calloused. At the same time, I felt grateful that my elder daughter was still young and hadn't been taught by me to be timid and submissive, knowing how to express her own wishes. At the same time, I remembered that after my husband died, the task of making and selling tofu fell on me. It was pouring rain that day, and as I rode my bicycle to sell tofu, it toppled into a ditch. A whole basket of tofu was ruined. I came down with a fever and lay in bed for 3 days, only to be branded as a husband-killing lazy woman from then on, becoming the Wang family's beast of burden for life. Reputation is the greatest asset for a rural woman. With it, women in the village gain the dignity to hold their heads high. Countless women have paid with their lives for it. I grew up under my mother's teaching that a tree lives by its bark, a person lives by their face. I've also witnessed young wives in the village drinking pesticide to prove their innocence, even at the cost of their lives. The fact that I was blamed for my husband's death was already set in stone, if the reputation of being greedy and lazy were also confirmed. Not only would I be unable to show my face outside, but my mother would also be labeled as failing to raise her daughter properly. Even my 2 daughters' future marriages would be affected. That's why in my past life, I was so willing to slave away for the Wang family, all for the sake of a good reputation and to ensure my daughters had the Wang family's protection. Who knows that these reputations, etiquettes, sense of shame, and even family bonds are nothing but fig leaves, the powerful use to cover up their cannibalistic nature. They are like a spider's web, carefully woven in advance, waiting for unfortunate women to crash into it. I won't be that foolish in this lifetime. I'll tear off their fig leaves and make them pay for what they've done. I blew out the kerosene lamp, wrapped an arm around each of my daughters, kissed them on their cheeks, and whispered, "Sleep now, Mommy isn't going anywhere." A bolt of thunder roared, and the knocking at the door ceased. I used to get up at 3 a.m. every day to walk the streets selling tofu, working so hard my back couldn't even straighten. While my 2 daughters could only have breakfast at their grandmother's house, my brother-in-law's son, Reese, ate eggs and fried dough, while my daughters only had leftovers. I remember one time when I sold tofu quickly and bought sponge cake in town to bring home, hoping to give my daughters a treat. But my mother-in-law scowled and scolded me for being wasteful, calling my daughters greedy for wanting the cake. She took the cake and put it away in the cupboard, and soon after, it ended up in Reese's hands. The youngest daughter saw Reese eating cake and went to ask her grandmother for some, but the grandmother scolded her all morning, poking her forehead with a finger. What did I do back then? All I knew was to hold my daughters and cry, for the sake of a reputation of filial piety. I only endured in silence. It was me who caused the deaths of my 2 daughters. I failed as a mother. In this lifetime, I must protect them well. Rainy days are perfect for sleeping. I enjoyed the first full night's sleep I've had in so long, and after waking up, I made my 2 daughters a hearty breakfast. Is this little bit of rain enough to make you too lazy to get up? Do you expect me to go sell the tofu? Eventually, the scolding voice of my mother-in-law came from outside the door. Upon hearing their grandmother's yelling, my two daughters instantly widened their eyes, their faces filled with fear. The younger one clung to my leg in fright, while the elder one quickly stood up, shielding me protectively. As she spoke, my mother-in-law stormed into the main room, her face as dark as the bottom of a pot. Seeing the food on the table, she trembled with rage and pointed at me, shouting, "What's wrong with you? Have you struck it rich? Eggs and fried bread. Are you still planning to live frugally? You're just greedy and lazy." Doesn't Yaozong from eldest brother's family and Reese get to eat as many eggs and fried bread as they want? If others can eat it, why can't my daughters? You know I'm not well, if it's such heavy rain. Whoever wants to sell the tofu can go ahead and do it. By the way, I won't be buying tofu today, and I won't be selling it tomorrow or the day after either. The rain is so heavy and the roads are so slippery. What would happen to these two children if something happened to me? It was the first time I had spoken so much to my mother-in-law, and I felt incredibly relieved. The hatred in my mother-in-law's eyes was barely concealed. I always thought you were a good one, but who knew you could be so cunning and lazy? Second daughter-in-law, my son was cursed to death by you. You need to stand up for yourself. Don't let others stab you in the back. Let whoever wants to stab me in the back do it. Who doesn't talk about others behind their backs, and who isn't talked about behind theirs. Just the other day, I heard my sister-in-law call you an old hag who does nothing but eat for free. My mother-in-law never expected that I, who had always been obedient, would suddenly become unyielding. Her face turned pale with anger, and she pointed at me, speechless. I quickly added fuel to the fire. Oh dear. My sister-in-law repeatedly warned me not to mention this in front of you. But I accidentally let it slip. Sorry about that, Mom. My mother-in-law shot me a fierce glare, flung open the front door of our house with all her might, plopped herself down at the entrance, and began wailing loudly while slapping her thighs, cursing at the top of her voice. This was her signature performance. When I first got married, she took a fancy to the wardrobe from my dowry and outright demanded it. The moment I refused, she pulled this exact stunt, sitting at our doorstep. Weeping about her miserable fate, my short-lived husband got a headache from all the crying and knelt down, begging me to give the wardrobe to his mother. My own mother came overnight to persuade me. Think carefully. You can't risk being labeled as unfilial over a wardrobe. 2 lifetimes have passed. And my mother-in-law still tries to force my hand with this trick. Too bad I've long seen through her tactics and already figured out how to counter them. I left the door wide open, letting my grey-haired, 50-something mother-in-law sit at the entrance and cry. After all, she wouldn't be done for at least 2 hours. I called my 2 daughters to eat. The younger one had been eyeing the soy milk, fried dough, and scrambled eggs on the table. The moment I called them, she rushed straight for the food. The younger daughter held an oil cake in one hand and a fried egg in the other, while the older daughter looked worried and asked, "Mom, should I go call Grandma and Uncle over?" I let out a bitter laugh. Half of the tragedy in my past life was caused by my own family. They wouldn't stand up for me. They'd only urge me to endure for the sake of reputation. I patted my older daughter's head. "Elle, from now on, we can only rely on ourselves. You have to believe that Mom can protect you and your sister." Elle seemed to understand my words and nodded firmly. "Mom, when I grow up and get stronger, I'll protect you and my sister too. Eat quickly. You'll need strength to protect Mom. Do whatever Mom tells you to do later. Take care of your sister, and don't be afraid." My heart ached. My Elle was forced to grow up too soon. Mother-in-law's sobbing echoed through the entire alley, but no one from my brother-in-law's family came out. My brother-in-law was a minor official in the village and worked at the farm. Mother-in-law said his job was earned by his own ability, and since he had to support 2 sons, his salary wasn't handed over to the family. The whole household relied on me grinding and selling tofu to exchange for daily necessities and improve our lives. I guess that family was waiting at home for me to be controlled by mother-in-law again, so they could continue to leech off me. Many relatives lived in the alley, and by now, they had all opened their doors, sticking their heads out to see what was happening. In no time, a crowd had gathered in front of my house. My mother-in-law had been wailing and cursing for nearly half an hour. Seeing that I had locked myself in the main room the whole time, with the entire alley watching the spectacle, she changed her tactics. She knelt in front of my house and began kowtowing. crying over my long-deceased husband as she did so. "My son, your mother is kowtowing to your wife. She can't be this lazy. If she is, your 2 children won't survive." The onlookers had never seen such a dramatic performance before and assumed I had done something terrible to my mother-in-law. Some even took it upon themselves to speak up for her, shouting toward my house, "Wang Laro's wife, what kind of daughter-in-law are you? Your mother-in-law is kowtowing to you, and you won't even show your face." At first, only one man was shouting, but soon a whole group of men joined in. If I didn't show up soon, I'd probably be dragged out and beaten by a mob. Wangjia village was no stranger to such incidents. A disobedient daughter-in-law was like a rat scurrying across the street. Everyone would chase and beat her, holding each of my daughters by the hand. The 3 of us emerged from the main hall, dressed in the mourning clothes we wore at my husband's funeral, weeping as we walked. Once outside the hall, I led my 2 daughters, kneeling and crawling step by step toward the gate, recalling the tragic fate my daughters suffered in my past life. I let out a wail, the kind of cry only a human pushed to the brink of despair could utter. My 2 daughters started crying when they saw me weeping, and for a moment, the sound of our wailing in the yard drowned out even my mother-in-law's mournful cries. "Wang Erju, you short-lived devil. You died early and left the 3 of us behind. Now your mother is forcing me to abandon the children and earn money to support your elder brother's family. We 3 have no way to survive. Come take us with you." Between sobs, I howled, laying bare my mother-in-law's petty schemes for all to see. The men who had been clamoring to drag out this unfilial daughter-in-law for a beating suddenly fell silent. Instead, it was the onlooking aunties and young wives who started speaking up. The first to speak was Aunt Fang from next door. She stepped forward and pulled at my mother-in-law, saying, "You've gone far enough. The earth on your second son's grave hasn't even dried yet. And here you are tormenting his widow and children." "Exactly. Sister Gia is pitiful enough as it is, and Cass is still so young, kneeling to her like this. Isn't that just cursing her to an early death?" chimed in a young wife nearby, dressed in mourning clothes. I clutched each of my daughters by the hand and headed for the door, wailing that the 3 of us couldn't go on living, that we were going to drink pesticide at their father's grave, that all 4 of us would die together. If mother-in-law wants to make a scene, then let's all make a scene together. The aunties and young wives were terrified. Without stopping to condemn my mother-in-law, they hastily pulled me and my 2 children into the room. Aunt Fang snatched a pesticide bottle from my tightly clenched hand and threw it far away. Seeing that she had nearly caused a death, my mother-in-law actually took advantage of the chaos to slip away. With the villagers' persuasion, I wiped away my tears, thanked them for their help, and promised that I would definitely live on with strength. Finally, each of the women, whether elderly or young, left with a piece of tofu, comforted by the thought of having saved a life. Once everyone had gone, I took off my mourning clothes, wiped away my tears, tied on an apron, and said to my eldest daughter, "Elle, did you see, protecting yourself doesn't always require great strength. You must learn to seek help. Take your sister to play. As a reward for being so well behaved, I'll cook chicken for you." Elle nodded and said, "Mom, I understand. I'll seek help." Cass clapped her hands and laughed. "Chicken for dinner. Next time. I want to play like this again. I'll even cry for Daddy again." My eyes stung with tears. This silly girl really thought we were playing a game. Thankfully, she was still too young to understand, spared from the pain. After this commotion, I refused to make or sell tofu anymore. My mother-in-law then brought in my own relatives, and several elders from the family took turns scolding me. No matter what they said, I had only one response: I won't sell tofu. I'll earn my own money to raise my child. They forced me, so I took my child and went to throw myself into the river. I was determined to make as big a scene as possible. Reputation is indeed a paper tiger. Once I stopped caring, it could no longer harm me. I'm just a woman with a daughter who needs to go to school and a baby who can't be left alone, and the family had less than 30 yuan to our name. I had to find a way to survive as quickly as possible. That day, it was raining when I went to bring an umbrella for my eldest daughter. As I came out of the school gate, I suddenly had an idea. Setting up a stall at the school entrance would be the perfect business for me. It wouldn't interfere with taking care of my younger daughter, and I could even drop off my eldest daughter on the way. It required little investment and showed quick results. I modified the stove at home, placed a flat pan on top, and started a small business catering to kids at the school gate. There were 5-cent bubble gums, colorful candy beans, various notebooks, small erasers, and even sausages and fried dough cakes cooked in hot oil. Because my ingredients are fresh and I treat everyone fairly, my little stall gets swarmed by chattering elementary students as soon as school lets out. After accepting fruits from me a few times, old Jong, the gatekeeper, not only stopped shooing me away but even helped look after my younger daughter when I was busy. He sighed and said, "Ah, it's not easy for a woman like you to make a living with 2 kids." I hadn't been in business for long when my sister-in-law showed up, second sister-in-law. "Why haven't you been visiting Mom's place lately? Are you cutting ties with the Wang family? Mom's prepared a table full of good food. Family shouldn't hold grudges overnight, now that second brother is gone. All of us feel for those 2 little girls of yours." I lowered my head to hide the hatred in my eyes. My sister-in-law was sweet-tongued but cruel-hearted. In my past life, she had acted just like this, flattering me at every turn, pretending to be my closest friend. After my mother-in-law became paralyzed, she would only drop by occasionally with some gifts, coaxing me into taking care of that wretched old woman. Lately, my mother-in-law has been unusually quiet. I feared she was brewing some mischief, so I decided to take this chance to see what other tricks she had in store for me. I led my 2 daughters into my mother-in-law's courtyard, where lunch was already prepared. My sister-in-law gave me a sidelong glance and said sarcastically, "Better to arrive at the right time than to arrive early. You, the second daughter-in-law, are clearly blessed. You get to eat as soon as you arrive." My sister-in-law is an idiot, but at least she's openly stupid. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her, so I just shot her a glance. Seeing my displeasure, my younger sister-in-law quickly stepped forward, took my hand, and said, "Second sister-in-law is indeed blessed. Mom has prepared a table full of delicious food. Go wash your hands and eat." She lightly patted the back of my hand, giving me a look that said, "Big sister-in-law doesn't know any better, let's not stoop to her level." At the dinner table, my sister-in-law probed, either subtly or overtly, about the income from my food stall. "Second sister-in-law is so clever. Now you don't have to worry about money anymore." I placed a piece of braised pork into each of my daughter's bowls. Worries are still worries, but at least the 3 of us won't starve. My underlying message was clear: I could support the 3 of us, and no one had the right to control me. Eldest sister-in-law, annoyed by how my sister-in-law had been buttering me up, remarked sourly, "That old gatekeeper Jong is no pushover. I heard he once chased a candied hawthorn seller for 2 miles. Second sister-in-law, what kind of sweet talk did you feed him to let you sell there?" Uncle Jong said. "Anyone with a heart would feel for us mother and children. Only those heartless wretches struck by lightning would think of scheming against their own kin." My words were measured, and after speaking, I turned to look at my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. My mother-in-law's face flushed instantly, while my sister-in-law remained all smiles. Uncle Jong may fuss over small matters, but he's clear-headed about the big ones. Family should support each other, not scheme against one another. My sister-in-law chimed in. My sister-in-law was about to say something, but just as she opened her mouth, my elder brother-in-law coughed loudly, cutting off her sarcastic remarks. "This isn't right." Alarm bells rang in my head. In my past life, after I died, I replayed the tragedies of my life countless times and came to understand many truths. My elder brother-in-law and my younger sister-in-law are cut from the same cloth, both hypocrites. He always takes the lion's share of the family's benefits while letting my mother-in-law and sister-in-law play the villains. Now, he's stopping my sister-in-law from speaking, which can only mean he's plotting something even bigger. I watched them quietly, coldly observing what kind of show these people were trying to put on. My sister-in-law shot me a glance, while my sister nudged my mother-in-law with her elbow, signaling her to speak up. My mother-in-law cleared her throat and said, "Second daughter-in-law, if you don't want to grind and sell tofu anymore, I won't hold it against you. Since my second son passed away early, I can't let outsiders gossip, saying I've wronged you. It's not easy for you to raise 2 children alone. The tiled house you live in now leaks wind and rain. I've thought it over. I don't have many days left anyway. Let's swap our homesteads. I'll trade you my big, sturdy house for your 3 rundown tiled rooms." So this is where they were waiting for me. In my past life, I foolishly swapped homesteads with them without even getting a written agreement. I built a 3-story house on my mother-in-law's homestead, And it was this very house that cost me my life. Now in this life, seeing that I'm no longer under their control, they've set their sights on this. They're really pushing their schemes right in my face. There are 3 homesteads, mine, my mother-in-law's, and my elder brother-in-law's. Their 2 plots are adjacent, with the grand single-story house built by the whole family before my father-in-law passed away. My late husband, who was never favored, was only given 3 dilapidated tiled houses at the end of the village. In my previous life, the small path at the end of the village became a wide asphalt road 3 years later after the rural renovation. My mother-in-law exchanged the 3 tiled houses she got from me and lent them to my elder brother-in-law's family for free, while she conveniently moved into my home. My elder brother-in-law renovated my house and opened the first general store in town for his wife, making a fortune. In my past life, I obeyed them in everything and ended up living in a drafty tiled house for 2 extra years. This time, seeing that I'm not under their control, they acted early. After my mother-in-law finished speaking, everyone at the table stared at me intently. Even Reese, the second son of my elder brother-in-law's family, fixed his gaze on me. He was in junior high school, with terrible grades. And unlike his older brother Yaozong, who was hardworking and willing to join the military, the department store in his previous life ended up being given to him. I won't exchange it. I can't let the villagers point at my back and call me unfilial. Saying I'm taking advantage just because I don't have a man, I put down my chopsticks, my gaze sincere. The elder brother-in-law and younger sister-in-law exchanged glances. But before they could speak, my mother-in-law roared, "Jia Li, don't push your luck. I've made up my mind to exchange this house. It's for the sake of my 2 granddaughters. If you don't like it, get the hell back to Li Village." My mother-in-law was ready to tear off all pretenses. In the rural areas of the 1980s, the winds of the rule of law had yet to reach our town. Most people still clung to the old ways of social customs and the law of the jungle. As a widow with 2 underage daughters, it would be extremely difficult for me to fight against my husband's family to keep our homestead. My brother-in-law remained silent. And even my sister-in-law, who usually pretended to be kind, didn't utter a word. They were probably weighing in their minds the feasibility of driving me back to my parents' home. I never expected this family to be so inherently wicked. Once their pretense failed, they immediately showed their true colors. My elder daughter had already put down her chopsticks, while the younger one, still unaware of the situation, climbed onto the stool to reach for the chicken drumsticks on the table when she saw no one else was eating. "What are you eating? A worthless burden like you still has the face to eat a chicken leg." Reese slapped the chopsticks out of his youngest daughter's hand. The little girl lost her balance and fell from the chair to the floor. In pain, she burst into loud sobs. I quickly pushed Reese aside, picked up my youngest daughter, and checked her for injuries. Seeing she was only frightened, I finally let out a long sigh of relief. Holding my daughter, I glanced around at everyone. Reese glared at me with hatred, while my brother-in-law and his wife looked indifferent. Surprisingly, my sister-in-law remained silent for once. Before I could react, my mother-in-law jumped out and started cursing at me and my children. "What are you crying for? A whole nest of debt collectors. You've already killed my son, and now you want to bring disaster to this old woman too. Come on, Elle, let's go home." Seeing that the family was starting to act shamelessly, I picked up my younger daughter with one hand and grabbed my older daughter, who was so frightened she had burst into tears, with the other, ready to leave the place first. But I underestimated their determination to get the homestead land. "Second sister-in-law, we're trying to discuss this nicely with you now. If you refuse to listen, don't blame me for being impolite." My brother-in-law stepped forward and blocked my way out. My sister-in-law reached out to snatch Cass from me, saying, "Sister-in-law, you're still young. Give us the child, and you can remarry sooner, without time to think." I instinctively pushed Elle away, shouting, "Elle, run." Chaos erupted. Elle ran off. Cass was snatched by my sister-in-law, and my elder sister-in-law slapped me hard across the face. Dazed from the blow, my youngest daughter's cries pierced my nerves. My mind flashed back to the bloated, waterlogged face of a neighbor's daughter-in-law I'd seen as a child, beaten by her entire family before she drowned herself in the river, with no support from my natal family. How can I, a daughter-in-law from another village, and my 2 young children possibly contend with this den of wolves and tigers? Am I doomed to follow in the footsteps of those village brides who were driven to their deaths? I thought that in this life, with my guard up and by fighting back actively, I could avoid retreading the same path as before. Could it be that I still can't escape being devoured completely? Should I resign myself to fate? No, resistance is my only way out. I cannot submit to fate. My mother-in-law kept pushing and shoving me toward the door, and I caught a glimpse of the kitchen knife on the counter. I dodged past her, rushed into the kitchen, and grabbed the knife, then roared, "Give me back my child!" Amid the screams and cries around me, my eyes were blurred with tears. I swung the knife wildly as I charged toward the main room. I was going to take my child back. My brother-in-law was the first to react. He raised a shovel, trying to knock the knife from my hand. Blocked from moving forward, I grabbed the nearest person, Reese, and pressed the knife to his throat, shouting, "Give me Cass!" The elder brother threw down the shovel in his hand and pointed at my nose, shouting, "Put that knife down now." I laughed hysterically, pulling the terrified Reese closer to me. "If you won't let us live, then none of us will. Let your cowardly son lead the way for us first." The sister-in-law's face turned pale as she rushed forward. "I'll tear you apart, you bitch. How dare you touch my son?" Seeing her approach, I lightly drew the knife across Reese's neck, leaving a thin line of blood on his delicate skin. "If you don't want your son to die right now, come over here. You were so strong when you slapped me earlier. Why don't you give yourself a slap too?" Reese was just a middle schooler after all. Seeing that I was serious, he wailed and begged his mother to save him. My sister-in-law froze in her tracks. The sight of the blood on her son's neck struck a nerve, and she slapped herself hard across the face. My mother-in-law let out a scream and collapsed to the ground. My sister-in-law was much smarter. Holding the tearful Cass, she slowly walked towards me, saying as she approached, "Sister-in-law, calm down. Let's talk things over properly. Look how scared you've made Cass." Listen to her words. She wasn't like this when she snatched Cass from my arms. I've seen this act countless times in my past life and won't be fooled again. "Don't come any closer. Put Cass down," I said, staring at my sister-in-law. She glanced at my elder brother-in-law, who was also stunned, and reluctantly set Cass down. Cass struggled to run towards me, and I let her cling to my legs while she sobbed, still keeping the knife pressed against Reese's neck. "Oh my, Daju, what are you all doing? Elle said you were going to beat them to death. Her and the kids." The voice of Aunt Fang, our neighbor, came from outside the gate. It seemed she had brought quite a few people with her. Elle, who had run away, must have fetched the neighbors. Aunt Fang led the crowd into the yard, and the moment she saw me holding the kitchen knife, she seemed to understand. She turned to Elle and said, "Go and take Cass away first." Elle came over and carried away Cass, who was crying uncontrollably. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Uncle Wang is coming! Uncle Wang is coming!" Hearing the shout, my hand weakened, and the kitchen knife nearly slipped from my grasp. Uncle Wang was the village chief of Wang family village and also the patriarch of the Wang clan. He was a man who valued face above all else and would never allow the village to be tarnished by rumors of a widow being driven to death, with him stepping in. My brother-in-law at least wouldn't dare to use force against me. Unexpectedly, as soon as my brother-in-law saw Uncle Wang, he immediately put on a different face. "Uncle Wang, look, my second brother's wife has gone mad. She's trying to kill someone." My sister-in-law quickly chimed in with her brother. "Village chief, my second sister-in-law has gone mad." My mother offered to exchange this big, flat house for her shabby tiled house. But not only did she refuse, she even tried to kill someone. "You came just in time. Please send some people to take the knife away and send her to the hospital." My heart, which had just begun to feel like I'd passed a hurdle, instantly turned cold. My sister-in-law was truly vicious. Her words gave Uncle Wang a clear course of action. I was a mentally ill person who should be sent to a psychiatric hospital, and they could rightfully take over the 2 children and the homestead. "Mom isn't crazy. It was Auntie who snatched my sister first," Elle cried out. My weakened hands regained their strength. It was worth all the effort I'd put into teaching Elle to stand up for herself. "I'm not fighting alone." "Nonsense. Gia has been married into the family for over a decade. When has she ever had mental illness? The truth is, your family is trying to drive her and her children to their deaths," shouted Aunt Fang, the neighbor. "Who's to say mental illness can develop later? Maybe Gia was driven to it by the Wang family. All right. What can't be discussed properly among family that you have to resort to knives and guns? Erju's wife. Put the knife down first. Uncle Wang frowned as he walked to the center of the yard. I tightened my grip on the knife. Uncle Wang, I respect you the most. The harmony among the men of our Wang village is all thanks to your leadership. I can't ignore your words, but I won't take this beating for nothing. Someone has to give me an explanation. I can't let people point at your back in the future, saying you're unfair and only know how to smooth things over. Uncle Wang's face turned red, then green. The eldest sister-in-law's brother had influence in town, and though Uncle Wang wanted to favor them, he couldn't bring himself to lose face. My words had cut off his path to partiality. Exactly. Jia can't just take this beating for nothing. It's already hard enough to find a wife these days. If word gets out that Wang village bullies widows and orphans, it'll be even harder to get a wife, Aunt Fang declared loudly. She had 3 sons at home and feared nothing more than failing to find wives for them. In the end, despite the grandmother's cries and protests after she woke up midway, Uncle Laro Wang forced the elder brother-in-law to write a guarantee, promising not to interfere in the lives of me and my children, and never to use force to coerce me into anything. At first, the elder brother-in-law resisted, but under Uncle Laro Wang's pressure, he finally wrote the guarantee. Erju's wife. Half the village witnessed Daju writing that guarantee. Do this for your Uncle Laro Wang's sake. I guarantee on Daju's behalf that nothing like this will happen again, Uncle Laro Wang said to me gently. What are you afraid of? Erju's wife. Your brother-in-law is a government official. If he dares to do anything, just report him and get him fired. The brother-in-law, relying on his powerful brother-in-law, had offended many people over the years, and some had long held a grudge against him. I pretended to lose my grip and dropped the kitchen knife. Reese scrambled away, crying and screaming, leaving a puddle of yellow urine on the ground. The days that followed were peaceful. I set up my stall at the school gate every day, and my 2 daughters became even more obedient, especially Elle. It was as if she had grown up overnight. During this time, my parents' family came again to persuade me to maintain good relations with my in-laws and not to burn all bridges. I picked up a broom to drive them out, and my own elder brother left with these words, our parents are old and can't control you anymore. If you keep acting this crazy, you'll be a bad influence on my daughter. Let's not have any contact from now on. I cried bitterly, severing the last thread of attachment I had to my parents' family. Things began to take a turn for the better. But I remained vigilant. I even slept with a knife under my pillow at night. Sure enough, what I feared has come to pass. That day, as soon as I opened the main door of the house, I saw a row of dead chickens lying neatly arranged in the yard. The chickens had their necks twisted off in unison, a gruesome sight. With a thunderous rush, all the blood in my body surged to my brain. This was a blatant act of provocation and threat. With a trembling heart, I gathered all the dead chickens into a woven bag, ready to take them to the field for burial. I couldn't let Elle and Cass see these dead chickens. I bit my lip hard, suppressing the fear in my heart. This method didn't seem like the style of my brother-in-law or sister-in-law, so who could it be? I became even more cautious, never letting Elle and Cass out of my sight, while also making some arrangements at home. These 3 dilapidated tiled houses are the only shelter for my mother and us children, and I must protect them well. That night finally came. As soon as I heard the screams, I didn't immediately turn on the light. Instead, I got up, opened the door, removed the muzzle from the big yellow dog by the bed, patted its butt, and said, Big Yellow, go. Big Yellow was the beloved pet of old Zhong, the school gatekeeper. It had accompanied him through countless nights guarding the school, and its combat skills were astonishing. Sure enough, under Big Yellow's thunderous barks, the person outside screamed repeatedly, followed by a moment of silence, and then even more intense screams. Seeing the lights turn on at Aunt Fang's house next door, I finally switched on my own light and stepped out, pretending to have just woken up. Sure enough, the thief, startled by Big Yellow's barking, scrambled in panic over the fence into Aunt Fang's yard. Little did he know, something good was waiting for him there too. What's going on, Aunt Fang? Did a thief break into your house? I shouted loudly toward the neighbor's place. Curses echoed from the other side. That thief was truly bold. Aunt Fang had 3 sons, each towering like iron pagodas when they stood up. Sister-in-law, it's nothing. You go inside quickly, just a petty thief. doesn't weigh more than a few ounces. I'll make sure he doesn't make a sound, so Elle and Cass won't be scared, said Aunt Fang's youngest son in a muffled voice. The thief must have been gagged, as only the dull thuds of punches and kicks landing on his body could be heard. With no cries of pain audible anymore, I went back inside to comfort my 2 daughters, then draped a coat over myself, grabbed a ladder and a flashlight, and looked over toward Aunt Fang's house. Aunt Fang and Uncle Fang were already up, standing in the yard with coats draped over their shoulders. "All right, Laro-san, that's enough. Oh my, isn't this old Wang's Reese?" Uncle Fang exclaimed anxiously. By now, the commotion had drawn the attention of the entire neighborhood. They saw Reese, beaten black and blue, with a stinky sock stuffed in his mouth, curled up in a ball, mumbling something incomprehensible through his muffled cries. This kid, not learning any good, how dare he steal from his own village? Laro Fang. For his father's sake, stop hitting him, coming to steal in the middle of the night. This is outrageous. Let's take him to the police station. Why send him there? He's just a kid. Even if you take him to the police station, what can they do? It's just embarrassing the whole village. Exactly. No need to involve the police. Just call his father to pay for the damages. Everyone started chiming in with their opinions. Aunt Fang pulled the sock out of Reese's mouth and tried to help him up, only to find he couldn't stand at all. Someone shone a flashlight and spotted the animal trap on his leg, its teeth deeply embedded in his calf, with blood pooling on the ground. Aunt Fang glanced up at me over the wall. "Gia, this Reese fell from your place, didn't he? Isn't that the trap you set on the wall to catch weasels?" "Really? I thought it was a weasel that killed our chickens last time. So I set a few traps. Seems like last time." I trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. Everyone immediately understood. Reese wasn't here to steal, but to cause trouble at my place. That child is truly heartless. The other day I saw Gia digging holes in the field to bury chickens. 3 or 4 hens that were still laying eggs, and a plump rooster too. What a sin. Why bury them? If they're dead, might as well eat them. You're really something. Those chickens were killed by that black-hearted, rotten-lunged bastard. What if he put something in them? Would you dare eat them? This is truly outrageous. He's already killed the chickens. So what's he doing at his aunt's house now? Planning to kill someone? Serves you right. The crowd chattered away. On the day the chicken had its neck wrung, as soon as I stepped out, I took the dozen or so chickens from the bag, arranged them neatly, and pulled the cart around the village 3 times. Only after hearing countless sighs of regret did I find a place to bury them. Those sighs of regret have now turned into sympathy for me and disgust for Reese. No one knew who threw another brick at Wang Reese, leaving him barely clinging to life. Only after the crowd had vented their anger did the elder brother and his wife stumble onto the scene. The moment the elder sister-in-law saw her son's battered state, she lashed out at Aunt Fang, demanding that her family pay with their lives. But when Aunt Fang's 3 sons stood in front of her, she immediately fell silent, collapsing onto her son and bursting into tears. In the end, it was Uncle Wang who stepped in to clean up the mess, arranging for Reese to be rushed to the county hospital that very night. The next day, the whole village learned that Wang Reese had sneaked into his second aunt's house intending to kill, but thankfully, he was stopped by the 3 sons of the Fang family. The 3 sons of the Fang family are truly commendable. They rid the people of a scourge. Soon, volunteers came forward to arrange marriages for the sons of Aunt Fang. Aunt Fang smiled so widely her eyes disappeared. Even the county hospital couldn't cure Reese's leg. He'll be dragging a lame leg for the rest of his life. The grandmother went to Aunt Fang's house to make a scene, rolling on the ground and wailing at my doorstep, crying for vengeance for her grandson. That very night, she suffered a stroke, her mouth twisted and eyes askew, left paralyzed in bed, barely able to speak. The sister-in-law was shouting about taking Aunt Fang's family and me to court, but someone must have talked her out of it. Anyone with sense knows she wouldn't win. I knew she stopped making a fuss for 2 reasons. First, Uncle Wang made it clear that if she relied on the courts to handle things, he'd no longer interfere in her family's affairs. Second, her family was about to celebrate a joyous occasion. Yaozong was getting married. Her future daughter-in-law was a young, beautiful, an educated official from the county's Women's Federation. With her second son already crippled, she didn't dare cause more trouble. What if she scared off such a wonderful daughter-in-law? That wouldn't be worth it, but I couldn't bear to watch a good girl jump into a pit of fire. Yaozong's fiancé is educated and has strong moral principles. In her past life, she married Wang Yaozong because she gave birth to a daughter and refused to have more children. She was humiliated and oppressed by the Wang family. She only managed to escape that den of tigers when her child was nearly 10 years old. Holding a complaint letter signed by over 30 villagers, I walked into the county's Women's Federation. There, I saw Yaozong's fiancée. She was truly a wonderful girl. She patiently asked me what I wanted to report, and when I described the actions of my mother-in-law and eldest brother-in-law's family, her eyes filled with shock. She repeatedly verified whether the facts were true. When she received my affirmative answer and saw the villagers' crooked signatures on the letter, the light in her eyes dimmed for a moment, then instantly brightened again. Big sister, I know that legal awareness is weak in rural areas, and the rights of many women and children are being violated, but you must believe that as long as we women unite, learn to resist, and learn to save ourselves, we can definitely change the current situation. You've done very well, and I will do my utmost to help you. Later, the prospective daughter-in-law of the sister-in-law flew away, and the family's reputation was ruined. Within a 10-mile radius, no one was willing to marry their daughter into that household. The younger sister was ordered by her snobbish husband not to return to her parents' home anymore and not to take care of her own mother, who was bedridden. The sister-in-law grew impatient after taking care of her mother-in-law for less than half a year. She pushed the elderly woman to the town hospital where her sister-in-law and husband worked, publicly exposing the sister-in-law's refusal to return to her parents' home and her unwillingness to care for her own bedridden mother. The sister-in-law and her husband ended up in a physical fight with the elder sister-in-law. No one knows what the mother-in-law, sitting in her wheelchair, was thinking at that moment. The elder sister-in-law was no match for the younger couple. At the critical moment, Reese intervened, splashing the sister-in-law's face with concentrated sulfuric acid he had obtained from who knows where. The sister-in-law was disfigured and soon divorced. With no place to live, she had no choice but to move into her mother-in-law's house to take care of her. Reese was sentenced to 10 years. And the sister-in-law took out all her anger on her younger sister-in-law, often standing on her own wall to hurl insults at her. Their verbal fights would frequently escalate into physical altercations. The household was in constant chaos, with endless drama. Uncle Wang completely washed his hands of their affairs. While raising 2 children, I also ran a business to save money. After my younger daughter started kindergarten, I gave up the small stall near the school and used my savings to buy an electric tricycle, turning it into a mobile stall to sell goods around town. 3 years later, the planned road was finally built right in front of my house. I demolished 3 tiled rooms and built a 3-story building, opening the town's first supermarket. The eldest daughter was admitted to a university in the provincial capital and even joined the student union. She would never again grovel without principles to please anyone. The younger daughter grew up surrounded by the love of her mother and sister, filled with a sense of security. I expanded the supermarket, and on the day of its reopening, the eldest daughter held her little sister, dressed in school uniform, to cut the ribbon. The glass door reflected the opposite street corner. The sister-in-law was pushing her mother-in-law, covered in bedsores, to collect garbage. I turned around and stuffed another wad of money into the donation box. The 18th girl on the sponsorship list was named Wang Xingnan. The wind chimes tinkled as sunlight spilled over the neatly arranged sanitary pads on the shelves. Suddenly, my little daughter pointed at the TV and exclaimed, "Mom, the sister you sponsored got into Peking University." On the news, a girl in a graduation gown smiled at the camera. "Thank you, Mother Lee, for telling me that a woman's fate isn't an iron weight, it's a phoenix." I became famous once more, but this time not as the model daughter-in-law, but as the well-known philanthropist who donated money every year to sponsor girls who couldn't afford an education. I knew all too well that the root of my past tragedy was my lack of education and the brainwashing of outdated, rotten ideas. Having escaped that hellish life myself, I was determined to help more women break free too. We will all have a better life.